My jealous sister-in-law made a comment about my dead daughter, and everyone is telling me to forgive her. My wife and I have been together for 5 years, and we have always known that we wanted a big family. Because we were Christian, we didn't start until after marriage. She got pregnant 3 months after we were married, and we had our first baby boy. Only a year later, after our first was born, we had our daughter. A year after that, we had our second son. And finally, 2 years after that, we had our second daughter. However, this pregnancy was different from the last ones. During this pregnancy, my wife was constantly complaining about her back pains and how she was constantly sore all the time. During the delivery, the doctors realized that she had a tumor in her uterus, and they had to do immediate surgery. Luckily, my wife made it out incredibly healthy and well, but the doctors informed us that it would be impossible for us to have any more kids. She had postpartum depression after finding this out because she felt like she was letting me down and not giving me the big family I wanted. But I assured her that it was absolutely fine. Even with my constant reassurance, her depression didn't get any better for a couple more months. She was supposed to get maternity leave for only 3 months, but decided to stay for 7 months. I decided to reach out to my brother because we were very close. He has always been a great role model and older brother to me. However, his wife seems to not like me or my wife for some reason. She is always comparing her kids to ours and making comments about how unhealthy our firstborn boy's life is, since he is already a national chess master. She says that he should be enjoying his life, doing kid stuff, not on some geeky board. But we have already had this conversation with our son, and he absolutely loves chess, and the fact that he is good at it doesn't change anything in his average life. She also likes to make comments about my daughters as well, but me and my wife don't seem to mind for the most part. My brother says it because she is pregnant, so she is being emotional. My brother helped us out a lot with general things around the house, which made life a lot easier. Now, I absolutely love my wife, and she is the greatest human and mother to live on the face of this planet. However, she would sometimes be a bit uncautious with the kids. This didn't happen with our first baby, but I think with all her emotions bottled up after the second pregnancy, it made her a bit emotionally preoccupied. Sometimes she would forget the stove was on, and I had to turn it off to make sure the house didn't explode. But I never told her about how she needed to be a bit more aware because I knew she was already struggling with so much. That's when it happened. One day, while I was at work, my wife decided to take the kids to the park. My daughter got hit by a car, and after 6 hours of emergency surgery, she sadly did not make it. My wife doesn't have a good recollection of what happened, nor do I want to talk about it on this platform, but it was the most traumatic experience of my life. My wife and I have been dealing with it for the past 4 months, and even though we are suffering inside, we have to keep up for our kids. Now, this is also about the time that my brother's wife invited all of our family to a pool party at their place. My wife and I thought it would be a good idea for our kids to socialize with their cousins. My whole family was there, and they were all extremely supportive of me and my wife. They all gave their condolences and were super polite about it. Except for my brother's wife. Apparently, according to my brother, it was again just the fact that her emotions were out of whack because of her pregnancy, but my wife never acted like this. Still, we all tried to enjoy ourselves, and the kids were certainly having a great time at my brother's gigantic pool. That's until the kids started playing pranks on us. The kids pushed me into the pool while I was by the edge. I did think this was funny, but then they started taking things too far by damaging me and my wife's brand new Tesla. We calmly explained to all of the kids, including my nephews, why these types of pranks were not acceptable. In the middle of me lecturing them, my brother's wife stepped in and started shouting at me and my wife. She told us that we have no grounds to talk to their children, and that it was probably all my children's fault anyway. My wife obviously was not having it, and said that the children were the ones that actually did the damage. Things escalated more and more until some other family members came to see the commotion. That's when my brother's wife dropped a bomb and said, "Maybe this is why your daughter is dead." My wife started crying and left, whereas I stayed and demanded an explanation. What happened next was even crazier, though. After my nephews and kids tried pulling a prank and damaged my brand new Tesla, I tried lecturing my kids and my nephews, But in the middle of my lecture, my brother's wife stepped in and got into an argument with my wife, and it got to a point where my brother's wife made a comment about our dead daughter, who recently passed away. My wife left crying, whereas I stayed and demanded an explanation. My brother and parents had to take me to a different room to call me parents, and I demanded that my brother go and make his wife give one hell of an apology. My brother and parents kept on repeating to me that, although they understand the situation, that my brother's wife was pregnant, and making her apologize would be very bad for her. They also said that it wasn't her fault that she had to get such hormonal differences, and that I should forgive her. At that point, I was shocked. My brother, who was my role model, and the person that was one of the most sympathetic people, had just told me to forgive someone that just insulted my wife and disrespected my dead daughter. Furthermore, my parents were okay with this. I had never ever seen this side of my brother or my parents, and so that's when I gave them an ultimatum. I told them either his wife would apologize and not be invited to further family functions, or else my brother and parents would never be able to see their nephews or grandchildren ever again. I told them that we would leave the state and go absolutely no contact with them for the rest of their life. That's when they paused and looked anxious, and I could tell that if it was taking this long for them, decide it wasn't worth staying for their response. I took my kids and left the house. But what he texted shocked me to my core, and I couldn't believe what was going to happen next. But what he texted shocked me to my core, and I couldn't believe what was going to happen. This man said that his wife is going to apologize. I was extremely shocked. It literally shocked me to my core, but I said, okay, let's go. I had gone ahead and called up my wife and let her know that my sister-in-law wants to apologize, and she said no, and I was like, okay. And I went ahead and put my phone back in my pocket. She is not trying to hear no apologies. She doesn't want to listen to no apologies. She doesn't want to see this lady again. But you know what I want? I want that apology. So I had got my kids out of the car, and we had walked back inside of the event with my brother. And when we got in there, for some reason, his wife was just shaking, and they had already called 911. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on, man? I'm going to just go ahead and skip all of the formalities. This chick faked a pregnancy dropping scare so she didn't have to apologize. And then my brother and my parents blamed it on the hormones. They said that something like this may happen if we try to get her to apologize. And I'm like, she's faking. She's obviously faking. This was fake. And then I thought back, and I was like, my wife was so right to not even want to get an apology from this lady. Just sick. She's a sick individual. And then I straight up said, the ultimatum is not even there. Y'all just not going to see the kids at all. And I went home, and it's been 3 days since that incident, and I'm just mad. But my question is, am I the Aholi for being mad?